If I found another therapist, promise not to lie to them?
I'd say yes, but I'd hate to have to lie to you.
I am Grant from Screen Rant. It is great to get to meet you both and talk about I'll Be Right There. I watched it earlier and just loved this movie from start to finish. It's such a sweet slice of life type movie. Kayli, I'd like to start with you, and then Charlie, what was it about this film that really sparked both of your interests to want to be a part of it?
I got the script during the pandemic. And I knew that my friend Merritt Weaver, who I did Godless with, had worked with Edie closely on Nurse Jackie, and she had worked with Brendan. And so I wanted to ask her about working with Brendan and how that was. And I take her word as law. And she said that working with Edie changed her fundamentally as an actor and was one of the best experiences she's ever had. And from Merritt, who has worked with so many incredible people, it just sort of sealed the deal for me. I wanted to work with Edie, and I thought the script was beautifully written, and there was a clear sign that it was going to be collaborative, and that just checked all my boxes.
Similar thing for me. It was just to work with Edie. We had worked a little bit together in the past, but not nearly as much as on this. So like for the chance to work with her, and the ensemble cast was amazing. Even before I read the script, I knew I wanted to be a part of it. But then reading the script, I was like, it was just written beautifully. And like Kayli said, it had so much familial aspects to it and room for improv. And it was funny and touching and sad and relatable. And it was a no-brainer.
So I'd love to touch on getting to work with Edie because you both have very different relationships with her in the movie. Kayli, you're sort of you try to be the good daughter. Charlie, you're kind of all over the map. And I'd love to hear what it was like for both of you finding the rhythm of your relationships with Edie, especially given that this was an indie film. So you have to really, find that quickly.
I always think whoever's number one on the call sheet really dictates the energy and the environment of the movie. And when it's someone like Edie Falco, I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody who's worked with her who wouldn't say that she is the standard bearer for how a number one should act. She is professional. She shows up ready, and knows her stuff, but is not afraid to play. It's not afraid to look silly. Takes the work seriously, but not herself. And those are a lot of the things that, I always strive for when I work. So to watch her, it felt very mother-daughter. It felt like I was trying to learn from her example every day on set, which I think you can feel and see in the finished product.
And then Charlie, how about for yourself?
And really just same as what Kayli said, Edie makes it so easy to have these relationships. They were already written so perfectly on the page that it was all sort of there. But I just tried to think about my mom because I see a lot of my mom in Wanda. Not necessarily there's not a lot of crossover with my relationship with my mom and Mark's relationship but I just try to think about that and Edie's in every scene of this movie, so just following her lead and trying to find my footing within the chemistry of this family, and then having it all sort of culminate when we all were able to get together was really beautiful.
So speaking of when you get together, I would love to hear about the two of you. You're finding the dynamic of your sibling relationship, because it is kind of funny watching these two sort of scrap, but at the same time, there is still clearly a care and sort of a don't tell mom I'm doing this attitude between the two of you. What was it like finding that with one another?
There's something about your siblings that really brings out the most childish version of you. They're your secret keepers, and they're your best friends. They're also your tormentors. There's so much tied up in that relationship. But I think the prevailing thing that I felt was like a sense of safety. Like there was that the only reason that these two people, Mark and Sarah, could be this way to each other is because there's real love there. Like real, you go to jail, I'm bailing you out kind of love. I mean, that's the only way that you can act a fool in front of somebody. And I felt very, very comfortable acting a fool in front of Charlie Tahan.
I felt very comfortable acting a fool in front of Kayli Carter. Yeah, I think, a lot of it I think is just like great casting. Like it worked, and we just naturally have good chemistry. And Kayli, I just thought was amazing from day one. And and like Kayli said, like there's not really an argument in this movie that probably didn't end off screen with like, okay, yeah, love you, see you tomorrow. Like there are high stakes to it, and there's a struggle there, but it is, at the end of the day, it is like nothing but love, I think, and that came across on the page.
Yeah,
like we didn't have to force that in at all.
I love the idea of off screen as where they get the I love yous in after arguing
on screen too, but like yeah.
That's funny. So you talk about the stakes then, and Kayli, I would love to turn to you first, because for much of this film, your character's dealing with the prospect of about to give birth and sort of what her life is going to be like after that. And I'd love to hear sort of what was going through your character's head as she sort of, tried to figure out this life path while also still glomming on to her mom and hoping that she'll be there to support her through this.
I think that when I'm on my way to becoming a mother, I call my mom fairly frequently, but I can just tell that I'm going to be one of those people that like, as soon as I have to do that, I'm going to be like, Mom, like it's so scary, the prospect of that to me. I think sometimes like we minimize what a massive transformation that is in a woman's brain and body. Like there is an alien that has taken over the spaceship. Like she is not in control of what happens to her in any way. And there's a real desire to like get that back and have things be perfect and do things correctly. And that I really related to, like wanting to do it the right way and not wanting to mess up a kid. That feels like a really high stakes mistake to make. And so I think that piece of it was like, oh, of course she wants her mommy. Like this whole time, she needs to keep her mommy close. That really tracked for me.
Well, I would be curious to see how she does after the birth and see if maybe she does take those lessons into account.
I would be curious as well to check in on Sarah and Eugene at this moment and see how they're doing. I would be curious.
And then Charlie, I will turn to you next, because the stakes are pretty high for you as well, as you're sort of figuring out what to do in life. You've been kicked out of therapy. You are considering, I don't want to spoil it, but a certain job career, let's say. And I'd love to hear sort of what it is like for you, finding the core of this character as he is in this sort of aimless part, this driftless part of his life.
Well, I was saying a little earlier today, like, I think that when I read the script, he was so aimless and is sort of a character that doesn't have a center and is really unpredictable. And that's exciting as an actor, I think. Mark doesn't have a thing. He doesn't have a thing. He's sort of just doing things impulsively, seemingly. And I think with the big decision that he makes in the movie, I imagine it's something he's probably put thought into, or at least the idea has been in his head for many years to sort of do something about his this sort of weird limbo stage of his life that he's in that he can't seem to get out of, and he doesn't know who he is yet. At a time when you're sort of expected to be coming into your own and becoming a fully fledged adult. And I think that he just ultimately decides that he needs to do something. And whether it was, it might have been the first thing that crossed his mind, but like he recognizes that he needs some structure in his life and that he can't keep treating everything as a joke, basically.
Well, and I'm glad that we got the little tag update at the end to say where he ends up, because I definitely didn't want any negative consequences to come from his decision. So I was happy to hear that. And now we've talked about Wanda's influence on your characters' lives, and I'd love to hear what you actually think your character's dad influence might be, because we see that he's sort of an absentee figure. He's wrapped up in his new life, and so I'd love to hear from both of you what you think, how you think his, raising of your characters may have influenced where they are today.
That was a large thing for me finding Sarah, actually. I think it's the piece that I understood the most was this piece of her wanting her father's approval and her father's support. And it seemed so clear to me that if my father had been starting a family from scratch again and trying to make new choices and trying to do things differently, then it's only natural for the adult children of that parent to go, okay, so what was wrong with the way that you raised us? Like that's gotta reflect so personally onto a daughter who just wants her dad to walk her down the aisle. That piece, I think, felt like I didn't need to do much mental gymnastics to understand that.
For me, I think Mark is probably someone who sort of pushes things off, brushes them aside, like acts like it doesn't bother him, probably tricks himself into thinking it bothers him less than it really does. Yeah. I think there's definitely like anger and resentment there. I never thought of like a through line of why Mark is the way he is and how that related to the way he was raised. I do think like thinking back now, I probably like had it in my mind that is a bit of a mama's boy, and his real authority figure and person he probably got along the best with was his mom. But also she can be a bit of a pushover, and he sort of, walks all over her at the same time in a very adolescent way. So yeah.
It really is interesting seeing how you both treat her throughout this film, but at the same time, I'm glad that you both sort of really took those character ideas to heart, because it makes your performances all the more impactful. And Kayli, I'd love to turn to you next, because I was talking with Brendan, and he was mentioning the porch scene after you find Wanda with the woman she's sort of seeing, and how that was sort of a improv one shot. And I would love to hear sort of about the putting that scene together and sort of what you think is going through Sarah's mind as she's in this moment.
I think often we don't see our parents as people. I'm very lucky with my own parents that like they were very young when they had me. And so they were learning and screwing up along the way in a way that was very helpful to see as a kid, that like parents aren't a perfect exalted human. But in a lot of my friends, I would see them interact with their parents, and there's just this thought that this human is immune from mistakes or immune from their own private wants and needs. Like, to consider your parents' wants and needs, especially your parents' sexual wants and needs, I think is not something adult children are in the practice of doing. So that piece of it, I was like, oh, this has got to be for her a discovery that her mom is a person with her own sexual desires, wants, and needs. And also something that she gets to bring up whenever she wants to. Like, I can see Sarah not letting this lie And that was so fun for me to do. And Brendan, again, like once he saw that I was game to improv, he just kept pushing a little bit more. He just wanted the laughs. That's all he wanted from me. By the end of it is just to make him laugh. And that was my goal as well.
I love that Sarah will take that on to prod her mom every now and again with. That does seem perfectly in line with her. And Charlie, I don't think we really see what Mark's reaction would be to that relationship. And I'm curious just to hear what you think he might feel about, that discovery.
I don't think he'd care.
Yeah. So nonplussed. So I
think he'd go, okay.
Yeah.
First thing that comes to mind, I really never considered it. But I don't think he would care at all. He'd just go, okay, is this something I need to know?
That was actually my favorite piece of that storyline too, is that it just was something that she was doing and trying, and that it wasn't like, no storyline in this feels like the central sort of like issue. I think in a lot of movies, like any one of these things would have been made the issue of the movie, but it's all just sort of laid into the rhythms of how people live and people just like living by their whims, which I think is more honest.
Like I say, it's that really nice little slice of life storytelling that makes this movie really sing. And I can't wait to get the word out about it. I see I'm out of time already, so I will get on out of here. But thank you all so much for taking the time. I so greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
I used to think that I was the most interesting person in this family, but it turns out I'm a distant third.